Here's what's coming up on the world today. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky once again stresses Russia's fascination with the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Funeral holds for Palestinians killed in the Israeli military raid in Jenin in the West Bank. Tour announced in mass shootings in Philadelphia, Baltimore and Fort Worth in the United States. Welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. We begin with funerals holding today following 2 days of clashes in the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. Authorities say 12 Palestinians and 1 Israeli soldier have been killed since Monday when the Israeli military operation began. Israel has described the operation as a counter to terrorism, while the Palestinian Foreign Ministry says this is an open war against the people of Jenin.
Mourners filled streets of the West Bank city of Jenin as the funeral procession to bury at least 6 of the 12 people killed during the 2-day military operation of Israel began. Hundreds of men marched through the streets of the camp, waving flags, chanting and firing rifles into the air. The 2-day-long Israeli raid was one of the biggest military operations in the West Bank for years. The operation, which the army says was aimed at destroying militant infrastructure and weapons in the Jenin refugee camp, was launched with a drone strike on Monday, and over 1,000 troops were deployed. After they left, residents who had vacated the camp during the fighting began returning to its dark streets. Some residents said they were used as human shields in front of them during the raid. Jenin resident Samar Sabag held her neighbor who was shot in the neck on the first day of the raid, and with no paramedics or ambulances, he bled out and died soon after. Sabag and her neighbors were just returning home on Wednesday, recalling the toughest moments from the 2-day raid, from power and water cuts to the killing of 3 young men in their neighborhood. According to residents, the Israeli army raided their neighborhood, evacuated houses, positioned snipers on tops of houses, and held back ambulances. After they were done with the operation in Jenin, the Israeli forces withdrew, leaving residents to survey the damage behind, using light from their mobile phones to find debris and rubble in the streets. The densely populated refugee camp, where some 14,000 people live in less than half a square kilometre, has been one of the focal points of a wave of violence that has swept the West Bank for more than a year, drawing growing international alarm. The Israeli military said on Wednesday it struck an underground weapons manufacturing facility in Gaza. The Israel Defense Forces released black and white video, which it says shows a fighter jet strike on a Hamas facility in the Gaza Strip. On Tuesday, the Arab League held an emergency meeting to discuss the Israeli attacks. The meeting issued a statement saying that the Palestinian issue has always been at the core of the Arab countries, and the Arab countries will jointly support the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. The statement reiterated its support for the establishment of an independent state of Palestine based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, and called for the full UN membership of Palestine. It also urged the international community to take measures to stop Israeli aggression and request international protection for the Palestinian people.
Welcome back. Let's make a brief stop in the United States. As we are learning, the Secret Service is currently investigating after finding cocaine at the White House Sunday night. The discovery in the West Wing, which contains the Oval Office and other working areas for presidential aides and staff, led to a brief evacuation. Secret Service agents found the suspicious powder in an area that is accessible to tour groups while doing a routine inspection. President Joe Biden and his family were at Camp David in Maryland at the time. The White House complex was closed as a precaution around 20:45 local time on Sunday after it was discovered. A preliminary test, which was first reported by the Washington Post, later confirmed it was cocaine. Officials say the Secret Service will lead a full review of how the substance got into the White House. They said cameras and entrance logs would be examined to determine who had access to the area where it was found. Cocaine is a Schedule II drug under the Controlled Substances Act, meaning it has a high potential for abuse, according to U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. Our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird, joins us now for more. Hi, Maria. This is right up your alley in Washington. What more do we know about this investigation at the White House?
Yes, good evening. This is right in an area, the White House. When I think about my visits to the White House and even reporting there, this is, I just can't imagine how this substance could have made it in a very open area. I think that the Secret Service, who is investigating this, they're going to be spending hours going through videotapes of actual, of those who have been in that specific part of the West Wing. So this is, I think, going to be a eye-opening investigation that I think will begin to see if there's something, whether it was planted, whether or not it was some sort of a outside individual, or whether it was right there inside within the White House officials and staff. So this is definitely not something that I think will be going away anytime soon.
Has the president said anything about it yet? We understand that he's at Camp David with his family.
The president is attending an NEA conference, and he also was at the July 4th celebrations yesterday evening. And so I'm sure that he has been briefed on it. I'm sure he has a full day of work today. And as you stated, he was not there during the time of the situation. So I'm assuming he will probably not make any commentary until there's additional investigation and more information on exactly what occurred.
So many people are wondering, how could this have, happened? How did it get in? Is it, someone in the White House, a staff maybe, or, could it be someone close to the president using such?
You're exactly correct, because for those who have been, especially to the West Wing, the type of security that exists and the type of screening that one goes through would make it seem to be virtually impossible for something like this to make it into the White House. So it does call to question, was this something that individuals knew about? Was it something that was planted? What could have really occurred to have this type of substance enter a very open area, an area that many staffers go through, and where guests leave many of their items when they're storing them? Because there's even certain parts of the White House you can't even have your personal cell phone. So this type of security and the number of individuals that are on duty at the White House, especially in these areas, just makes this very unbelievable to even have been able to occur.
Have the Republicans said anything about this? Members of Congress, how are Americans reacting to this news?
Nothing official from the Republican Party. I expect that this is something that we will see as we're in the campaign season, especially as more information is released through the investigation. And I think the American people are just going to wait to see if this is something that is a bigger issue than, and if this is something that calls to question any officials. And so I think that's really what the American people are waiting for. I don't think that at this time they have really any real understanding or basis for a negative opinion, other than the fact that they would like to know how this happened, and wanting to ensure that those who are in the White House are following the law, most importantly.
And Maria, do you think this is one infraction too many? I know that we had about a man who was trying to get in through some of the rear positions of the White House. Also a toddler that was nabbed sometime in April. Do you see security being tightened, toughened after this?
Security will definitely, I will definitely be at a higher alert. And if there has been any type of security breaches that have occurred or lack of security, even with those who are White House officials, I think that will be reinstated and it will be beefed up because I think this is, not wanting to have this type of occurrence again. So I think that we're going to see definitely an increased amount of security. As it stands now, we are already in beefed up security, but I think the attention to the details of the measures that are in place for security are going to be closely paid attention to and enacted across the board.
Right, many thanks, Maria. We continue to follow the updates. Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird live for us there. In the meantime, Puigdemont says he and other leaders in Catalonia are being politically persecuted by the European Union's General Court's decision. He was addressing a news conference earlier today where he reminded that they were back to Spain to exact some spot where the movement began before the ruling, and that 5 years later, it has been proven they are not traffic with drugs or bioweapons, but traffic referendums and voting. He says they would appeal the court's decision and will do so as soon as possible and in the most ambitious way. He condemned the ruling, saying removing their immunity or the accusations should not be happening in Europe.
In case T-115 of 2020, Carles Puigdemont y Casamajo, Antoni Comín y Oliveres versus European Parliament supported by Kingdom of Spain, the General Court six-chamber extended composition hereby first dismisses the action, second orders Mr. Carles Puigdemont y Casamajo and Mr. Antoni Comín y Oliveres to bear their own costs and to pay those incurred by the European Parliament. Third, orders the Kingdom of Spain to bear its own costs. In case T-272 of 2021, Carles Puigdemont y Casamajo, Antoni Comín y Oliveres, Carla Ponsati y Obiols versus European Parliament supported by Kingdom of Spain, the General Court sixth chamber extended composition hereby first dismisses the action, second orders Mr. Carles Puigdemont y Casamajo, Mr. Antoni Comín y Oliveres, and Mrs. Clara Ponsati y Obiols to bear their own costs and to pay those incurred by the European Parliament, including those incurred in cases T-272 of 2021-R and T-272-21-R2.
Away from Spain, it's a special day in Britain as it celebrates 75 years of the National Health Service, with royals, politicians, staff and patients expressing pride in its past and determination that it will endure in the future despite current challenges. Launched on July 5th, 1948 by a Labour government following the Second World War, its mission was to ensure everybody, irrespective of means, age, sex or occupation, have equal opportunity to benefit from the best and most up-to-date medical and allied services available. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour's Keir Starmer attended a service at London's Westminster Abbey to mark the occasion. One former minister once remarked that the NHS was the closest thing the English have to a religion, such as the widely held affection for service and those who work for it. Today is also special in Scotland, which is marking King Charles's coronation in Edinburgh, following the royal tradition of holding a ceremony in Scotland after the London event. A couple of hours ago, there was a grand procession and a Thanksgiving service at St Giles Cathedral, where he was presented with the honours of Scotland, Britain's oldest crown jewels. Dame Catherine Granger bore the Elizabeth sword, the Lord Justice Clerk, Lady Dorian, carried the sceptre, and the Duke of Hamilton presented the new king with the crown. Charles and Camilla were crowned in London's Westminster Abbey in May in front of about 100 world leaders in Britain's biggest ceremonial event for 7 decades. The 74-year-old succeeded his mother as monarch of the United Kingdom and 14 other realms when Queen Elizabeth died in September.
The impressive service over, the royal procession began to leave the cathedral. The young queen, who reigns in direct descent from Robert Bruce,
entrusting you to defend our laws and to uphold justice and peace.
This sword I so promise by God's help.
By the symbol of this sceptre,
We turn our attention now to Sudan, as fierce battles between the armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces rages in Omdurman, the western part of the Sudanese wider capital, leaving behind deserted streets and damaged buildings. The army launched airstrikes and heavy artillery, and there were ground battles in several parts of Omdurman. That's according to witnesses. The RSF said it had shot down a fighter jet, and residents posted footage that appeared to show pilots ejecting from a plane. There was no immediate comment from the army. Conflict between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces erupted April 15, bringing daily clashes to the capital, triggering ethnically motivated killings in the western region of Darfur and threatening to drag Sudan into a protracted civil war. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir has announced the country's long-delayed elections will hold next year as planned. President Kiir says he will run for re-election in the polls, the first since the country gained independence. No other candidate has declared their candidacy, but first Vice President Riek Machar is also expected to run. Mr. Kiir has been president since independence in 2011 after a long-running civil war, but conflict continued even after independence. A civil war broke out in 2013 when the president fell out with Mr. Machar. And in a bid to strengthen the bilateral cooperation between Rwanda and Nigeria, both countries are seeking ways to increase their parliamentary diplomacy, defense, security, trade and investment, and social peer-to-peer exchange. This was disclosed by Mr. Vianney Rubagumya, the second counselor of the Rwanda High Commission in Nigeria, during an event organized in Abuja to celebrate the 29th Liberation Day and the 61st independence anniversary of the country in Abuja. The day marks the end of genocide, the defeat of the government that executed it on July the 4th, 1994, and has been described as a major and defining milestone in the post-independence history of Rwanda.
29 years after liberation, is still in a process at the forefront of the leadership agenda of His Excellency President Paul Kagame, animated by the Vision 2050, is the commitment to consolidate and sustain the journey towards self-reliance by ensuring holistic economic emancipation as well as effective and accountable systems of governance. In this process of liberation, Rwanda counts on her citizens, of course, but also on her friends and partners. I therefore take this opportunity to commend the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for the immense support during the transformation journey and the excellent bilateral cooperation. President Kagame's attendance at the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's inauguration on the 29th of May 2023 is an affirmation of the strong bond between the two countries. Both countries are increasing cooperation, including in parliamentary diplomacy, defense and security, aviation, governance, social peer-to-peer exchange, and trade and investment.
And Monday, July the 3rd, was the hottest day ever recorded globally. That's according to data from U.S. National Centers for Environmental Prediction. The average global temperature reached 17.01 degrees Celsius, surpassing the August 2016 record of 16.92 degrees Celsius as heat waves sizzled around the world. The southwestern U.S. has been suffering under an intense heat dome. In recent weeks, temperatures reached 116 Fahrenheit in Phoenix, the city's hottest day so far this year, 1 degree from the record for the date. Highs in South Texas have also recently soared to 48 degrees Celsius. In China, an enduring heat wave continued with temperatures above 35 degrees Celsius. North Africa has seen temperatures approach 50 degrees Celsius. Late last month, hospitals in India's northern Uttar Pradesh state filled up with patients who had fallen ill due to scorching heat as temperatures soared close to 45 degrees Celsius. Even Antarctica, currently in its winter, registered an anomalously high temperatures. Ukraine's Vanadesky research base in the white continent Argentine islands recently broke its July temperature record, and that's with 47.6 Fahrenheit. All over in the Netherlands, a rare summer storm with winds of up to 90 miles per hour hit the Netherlands today, causing at least one death, as people across much of the country were told to stay indoors and travel was severely disrupted. Video footage from Amsterdam showed damaged vehicles and boats trapped under fallen trees along the city's canals. The National Meteorology Institute sent its highest code red storm warning to residents of the Noord-Holland province, which includes Amsterdam, urging them not to leave their homes and to note emergency service numbers for life-threatening situations only. The storm, named Polly in the Netherlands' worst ever, is the Netherlands' worst ever during the summer months and its strongest overall since January 2018, and that's according to the weather agency. Heavy storms in the Netherlands usually occur between October and April. The last heavy summer storm was in 2015 and was the first in over a century. The summer storm is causing much damage as trees are heavy with leaves, and many of them have become brittle during an unusually long dry spell in May and also June. Now that's China. The latest round of torrential rain since Monday, forcing more than 500 villagers to evacuate in Baolong town of Chongqing municipality. The downpours caused flood which collapsed 3 residences and damaged roads in the town on Tuesday. Life in the town has been recovering since most of the evacuated villagers returned home Tuesday afternoon. 17 villagers in 5 households whose residences collapsed or severely damaged by the flood have been temporarily arranged to live in a local area. And the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi, today visited the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station, a day after the agency gave its approval to Japan's plan to release treated radioactive water from the plant into the ocean. During his visit to the plant, Mr. Grossi listened to explanations by officials from Tokyo's electric power TEPCO about the water release plan. He also visited a facility where fish are monitored as part of the plant's water safety testing. And a major milestone for the decommissioning of the power plant, destroyed in the massive earthquake and tsunami in 2011. The IAEA said that a two-year review showed Japan's plans for the water release would have a negligible impact on the environment. The Japanese government is looking to start releasing water as early as August. The Nikkei reported Wednesday the plan still needs official approval from Japan's nuclear regulatory body, which is expected on Friday, July the 9th. And during a news conference later after his visit, Mr. Grossi said he saw no pending issue at the Daiichi nuclear power station, but he acknowledged concerns about the water release plan in Japan and abroad, including in South Korea and the Pacific Islands, where he's due to visit in the coming days.
I don't see any pending issue. Basically, of course, this is a complex operation, and there might be here and there some minor detail, but by and large, I think that all the basic elements are in place in case the government takes a decision to move forward with this. As you know, I will be going to Korea in a few days. I will be going to the Pacific Islands in a few days because I am going to explain what the IAEA, not Japan, what the IAEA is doing to ensure that there is no problem and that the environment is not getting any negative impact.
We're back in the United States, where officials there say 10 people were killed and 38 wounded in mass shootings in Philadelphia, Baltimore and Fort Worth ahead of the 4th of July holiday, prompting a fresh call from President Joe Biden to pass gun control legislation. In Fort Worth, police say 3 people were killed and 8 wounded in a mass shooting after a local festival to mark U.S. Independence Day holiday. In a separate mass shooting in Philadelphia Monday, July the 3rd evening, 5 people were killed, 2 were wounded, including a 2-year-old boy and a 13-year-old boy. Both of them were shot in the legs when a suspect in body armor armed with an AR-15 opened fire on strangers. Monday night shootings came a day after 2 people were shot dead, 28 others injured, about half of them children, in a hail of gunfire at a neighborhood block party in Baltimore. The motives in all 3 recent shootings remain unclear.
All too well, educators now find themselves in the front lines of gun violence. Some of your members talked about it, Jill talked about it. With your help, we passed the most significant bipartisan gun safety legislation.
And what's of July 4th without fireworks? They may have been absent here in Lagos, where the U.S. consulate celebrated the American independence, but they were certainly not missing back in the United States, despite all that appears to be happening. Hence, thousands of people gathered on the National Mall in the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C., for the spectacular fireworks show to celebrate. The fireworks were launched from both sides of the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial and lasted for about 17 minutes.
Brush t-shirt. Wondering who's going to...
And just right after those beautiful fireworks, we couldn't resist showing you this fireworks show. Despite it being illegal in the city of Chicago in the state of Illinois, fireworks are a long-standing tradition for millions of Americans every 4th of July, the holiday commemorating the U.S. Of America gaining its independence. In Chicago, Illinois, the nation's third largest city, however, fireworks of any kind are illegal. Go, go, Chicago. Well, that's the world today. Many thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Bye for now.